Okay, so with the Bloomborough gift mechanic,
Yeah.
it says specifically to gift the card, and it happens before the other effects, right?
Right. So as the spell is resolving, you gift the card and then get the rest of the spell's effects. Right.
Okay. Is it possible to order the triggers? The effect of the gifting a card and the other trigger?
Which other trigger? I guess I'm not.
The benefit of whatever like the card says.
No. So what happens is, as part of casting the spell, you choose an opponent saying, okay, when this resolves, you're getting the card, or you're getting the fish, or whatever the gift happens to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now they don't immediately get that thing. It's not a cast trigger that gives them that right away. It's just promising them that, hey, if this resolves, you get this gift, right? So then players get priority, and let's assume everybody passes without taking any actions. So the spell begins to resolve. The very first thing that happens is they get that gift. And
Can
then
you respond in between the gift and the other benefit?
you cannot, because as a spell or ability is resolving, like once it has begun to resolve, no player gets priority to take any actions until
Yeah.
everything is finished. So you
The reason I'm asking is because on Arena, the way the cards play is as separate triggers, and you can actually order them in any order you want. So you can put the gift before or after the effect. So sometimes I have like blowing up something as an effect, like with that raccoon guy, and then you blow something up, and then they get the card, which is relevant for. Then they cannot play it, for example.
That's weird. That shouldn't happen that way, but let me double check. Because Arena sometimes does things in weird order, but let me.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, let me just double check here.
Because I 100% thought it's the same way as you just explained it, like the same exact way. And then when I was playing Arena, it's like it let me order the triggers.
Right. I'm just double checking the CR on that right now just to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. It's risk gets static ability function with the curriculum stack. Seconds. Okay. As an additional cost, you may choose an opponent. Okay. Now, the thing that you're talking about was it like an instant or sorcery, or was it a permanent that said when this enters, if the gift was promised, do a thing?
It was an ETB, yeah, not
Okay,
a
so
permanent.
that's different, right? So that is a trigger that happens when it enters the battlefield, and yes, you may order your own triggers that go on the stack simultaneously. So like if I have a thing that says, when this creature enters, if the gift was promised, do a thing, and I also have a separate effect that says when a creature control enters, draw a card or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are separate triggers that are going onto the stack at the same time, and you get to decide the order they go on the stack. Now the difference is, if I have like an instant or sorcery that says, as an additional cost you may promise a gift, and then as it resolves, if the gift was given, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as it resolves, they get the gift before you get the rest of that instant or sorcery's effects. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but if
So it's different for permanence then. That's
it
cool.
it
Okay.
is different for permanents that say when this enters, if a gift was given, do this thing. That is a separate trigger that will go on the stack after the creature or permanent. Excuse me. After that spell is resolved and entered the battlefield, then its enter the
Okay.
battlefield trigger goes onto the stack. Right.
That's really important to know, actually.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I just had a game, right? And I had a Odric on my field, right? Which says at the beginning of each combat, keywords happen for all creatures on your side of the board.
Right.
And then the other player tried to prevent that from happening, right? So he when I moved to combat, like I was saying, like I want to move to combat now. He played Sink of the Stupor to bounce the Odric to my hand.
Okay.
Now after that, do I go back to the main phase, or do I go back to the combat, or to the beginning of combat?
Gotcha. So that type of an event, it really depends on when they are doing what they're doing. So for
Well, he was
example,
trying to prevent the ability.
right. He was trying to prevent that ability from going on the stack. Now the important thing is, if you enter combat, if you say I'm going to go to combat and everyone says yeah, pass priority, and then somebody says, well, in the beginning of combat before you declare attacks, I'm going to do this thing. Well, you've started combat, so you still get your beginning of combat triggers. Now what it sounds like they were doing is trying to keep you from getting that trigger at all, which means they would have had to do it during the main phase before you officially entered combat. So what you say is, I'd like to go to combat, and they go, oh well, I'm gonna Sink of the Stupor your Odric so that you don't get that trigger. And you go, okay, well, what happened is they interrupted the process of moving to the next step or phase, which means you have to start that process over before you move to the next step or phase. Well, as the active player, you could either say, okay, I'm going to try to move to combat again, or you can go, well, since I'm in the main phase and priority has basically been reset, with nothing's on the stack, I'm going to take more actions. So
you could have just played Odric again and let it. And
Exactly. Yes.
oh, like if Odric was your commander and it went to the command zone, yeah, you could do that. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, that's why like the timing of it is important. Like if you're trying to stop somebody's attack trigger, the best time to do that is in the beginning of combat before they move to attacks, because then they're limited to not being able to do things as a sorcery or anything like that. But if you're trying to stop a beginning of combat trigger, then yeah, the only really time to do that is before they move to combat, because even if you remove it in the beginning of combat with the trigger on the stack, they still get the trigger.
Yeah, that's more or less okay. That's. I didn't know you were going back into main phase.
So here,
It's never going back. It's just like you
stay.
And
so
like,
here,
yes,
real
it
quick,
just
let
keeps-
me show you this, because these types of things, a lot of players shortcut, and most of the time it doesn't matter, but sometimes it really does. So every step inside of a turn follows this exact pattern. Okay. The only exception being the untap phase, where none of this happens during untap. It's just untap happens. And most of the time, cleanup is not interrupted by anything unless something specifically triggers. But just in general, this is the pattern that every step and phase follows within the game. So you start with what's called a turn-based action. Right, so like the turn-based action is something that the game makes happen in that step or phase and cannot be interrupted. So for example, when we enter the draw step, I draw my card as a turn-based action. If there's triggers that happen at the beginning of the draw step, they don't happen before this. This happens first, right? In combat, declaring attackers during the declare attacker step is a turn-based action. Same thing with declaring blockers and dealing damage in the damage step, right? So we do the turn-based action. Then, if there are any triggers, they go on the stack then. And then we do priority to handle those triggers, right? If there are no triggers, or we've fully finished the stack with those triggers, then the active player has priority, right? And from there, they can either take actions, and then if there's actions, then we do priority to handle those actions, right? Or once they have finished taking actions, and once the stack is clear, then the active player can say, I want to move to the next step or phase, right? That now we are not officially in that next step or phase. They're basically just asking permission. They're saying, I would like the table's permission to move to the next step or phase. Once they do that, priority passes exactly like it would if they had put something on the stack. Okay, so similar to they cast a creature or they activated ability or whatever, they are basically, although not technically, passing to the next step or phase on the stack. And then what happens is everybody gets priority. Now, if somebody takes an act, if nobody takes an action, right, then that happens. We move to the next step or phase. But if somebody takes an action here, it's a little bit different than the active player taking an action and then passing priority. Because what happens is, So the active player took an action by like casting a spell or activating an ability. Players get priority. Once we finish with that priority, it goes back to resolving that action, right? Where okay, if once nobody has taken an action from priority, we don't get to change whether or not we're taking that action. The action's still trying to happen, whether it's casting a spell, activating an ability, whatever, right? The difference here is that this is not an ability or a spell or something on the stack. This is just asking for permission. Everybody has to pass priority without taking any actions. If anybody takes an action, it doesn't say, okay, well, cool, we go back to trying to get this permission. It goes, oh, well, we just completely negate this process.
What about mana abilities?
That's still an ability. You interrupted the process.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. So basically, you can reset the priority by tapping a land.
Correct. Right.
Oh, that's useful. I'm gonna use that.
Yeah. Yeah. So now
Okay.
you can do that. Now I will say, that it can be, depending on how it's used, that can be legally capable of doing that. But sometimes, depending on the situation, like socially, it can be referred to as what's called mana bullying. So
yes.
yeah. So
Okay.
like, let's say for example, we're in a 4-player game, right? And then it's player 1's turn. They're the active player, and they want to take an action, right? They want to cast a spell. Now, through some way or another, like maybe I'm player 4 and I had player 2 reveal their hand at some point, or I got to look at their hand and I know they have a counterspell. Now, I as player 4 also have a counterspell. Right? Now, player 2, hoping that somebody else they don't want to use their resource. They go, "No, I'm going to pass priority." And player 3 doesn't have anything and it gets around to me at player 4. I, knowing player 2 has a counterspell, can go, "Hey, player 2, what are you doing? I know you've got that counterspell." And he's like, "Well, I thought somebody else had an answer." And I can go, "Well, here, look, I'm going to tap this land for mana and reset priority."
Yes. Hell
and
yeah.
and I'm going to make you use your counterspell that I know you have. That's what we refer to as mana bullying. Kind of forcing someone into a situation where they have to make like none of it's a good choice. Like player 2 might suspect I have a counterspell, but they can't prove it. They can't, and even if they know I have one, then it just becomes this back and forth of like, well, I'm gonna tap mana, or I'm gonna tap mana, and I'm whatever. But yeah,
So
that's
when it resets priority, basically after you tap the mana, and you it doesn't use the stack, but you just pass the priority back to the first player.
Right.
And
It starts the process over. Right.
But does it start it over like all the way around back until the 4th player has not responded to the spell?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, it doesn't stop at a different point. It stops
No.
at the same point.
So like if
Okay.
if priority gets passed around, right? So let's say player 1 passed priority, player 2 passed priority, and player 3 took an action, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Once that action resolves, it doesn't pick up where it left off. It goes all the way back to player 1. Because what they did might have changed.
Active player, non-active player. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because
I see.
So basically, once player 2 passes priority, they don't lose the ability to react to anything that could happen in the future. So like let's say player 2 did have a counterspell, right? And then player 3 goes, well, hey, and they didn't do it, right? And player 3 goes, well, hey, before that happens, I want to flash this thing in, or I want to cast a spell, or whatever, right? And when they do that and they pass priority, player 4 counters what player 3 did. So now both player 4 and player 3 are fully tapped out. Okay? But we've resolved this. We go all the way back trying to resolve what player 1 did. Player 2 now has the opportunity to use their counterspell on player 1's. Because now they know players 4 and 3 are tapped out. They're like, okay, I have to. Or, whatever, right? So they can do that. Yeah. But every time we look at an object on the stack, it's treated as though it was the first time it got put on the stack. Priority goes around as though it was the first time we're trying to resolve it.
So, first one in a CDH game playing. I'm playing Magda. And
You're
I
talking about
tutor,
the original Magda that tutors for artifacts.
yeah, the
and dragons?
Brazen
Yeah,
Outlaw. So I'm tutoring for an artifact.
Sure.
So I'm searching my deck. There's 2 Washi Tongs out, and then there's actually at the time 2 consecrated things, but the number doesn't matter. So I go get Portal to Phyrexia to get rid of the consecrated sphinxes. At what time? How do the triggers enter the stack? So after I search, they get their Washi Tong triggers, but I also have the portal trigger that entered.
Right. Now, and I'm sorry. Washi Talk, spell that for me. Is it
It's
W?
the new bird. So
Yeah.
we'll just say Archivist of Ogma is the easier one. When you
Okay.
search your library, draw a card.
Yeah.
When somebody searches their library, draw a card. That's the important.
Yeah. This is gonna bug me.
I don't remember how to spell Washi Tong.
I'm trying to find. Oh, here it is. I found it. Washi, is it all knowing or librarian? I think it's librarian.
The librarian one.
Yeah. When an opponent searches their library, put a 1/1 counter on Washi Tong, draw a card. Okay, yeah. So here's the thing, is that Washi Tong sees you searching your library. Now, even though the triggering event happened then, the trigger is not allowed to go on the stack until the current spell or ability has finished resolving, right? So not until after you have searched your library, found the artifact or dragon, and put it onto the battlefield. Now, you put Portal to Phyrexia on the battlefield, which has its own enter the battlefield trigger. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices 3 creatures. Now, here's the thing. First off, whether or not those Washi Tongs get sacrificed, they saw you search your library, so they will get those triggers no matter when Washi Tong gets sacrificed, right? Or if it does, right? But now here's the thing. The game does not care the order in which the triggering events happened. And I'll clarify. What I mean is that it doesn't care that you searched your library to trigger Washi Tong before Portal to Phyrexia entered the battlefield to cause people to sacrifice creatures. All it cares is that once you have finished resolving that spell or ability, and then state-based actions checks, there are multiple triggers trying to go onto the stack at the same time, even though they're going onto the stack for different reasons, for different game events that happened at a slightly different time. All that matters is that all of those triggers are trying to go on the stack at the same time. So now we just look at how triggers resolve, right? So what happens is, let's say that so 4-player game, right? We got 1, 2, 3, 4. You are the you have your Portal to Phyrexia, right? That trigger goes on the stack at the same time that player 2's Washi Tong and player 3's Washi Tong triggers want to go on the stack, okay?
Yeah.
And you're the active player. It's your turn, okay?
Yes.
So it doesn't matter that Washi Tong saw you search before Portal to Phyrexia entered the battlefield. It just matters that now all of these triggers are trying to go on the stack at the same time. So we use the same method that we would if everyone had a trigger for the exact same reason. Everyone had like a creature's dies trigger or whatever, right? Is we start with the active player and you put your Portal to Phyrexia trigger on the stack first, and then we go in turn order. The Washi Tong gets their trigger on the stack, and then player 3's Washi Tong trigger goes on the stack, and then we start resolving from top to bottom. So player 3's Washi Tong resolves first, player 2's Washi Tong resolves second, and then your Portal to Phyrexia trigger resolves, having everyone sacrifice creatures.
Okay. So there's not a moment before the ETB triggers because you resolve the entire ability and then I have another trigger. Yeah, okay. I think that makes sense.
Oh, man.
Yes, I got my question for you.
Oh, yeah, go for it. What do you got?
Here, I'll turn on my camera.
Hey, there you are. Okay.
So
is that a saga, and what is that next to it?
Ripples of Undeath. So the saga says, for as long as you control this, you gain control of a target creature. And Ripples is proliferate, and then choose any permanents that had a counter, those phase out. So the question that arose was, whatever, I stole somebody's creature. and then they targeted this to get it back, and I phased it out.
Right.
Does this disconnect this now?
Yeah, so this would be different if it said like let's take Oblivion Ring for example as an enchantment that when it enters the battlefield you exile a creature, and it has a separate trigger that says when this leaves the battlefield return the exiled creature to its owner's control, right? Phasing out is not leaving the battlefield, so if you phased out the Oblivion Ring, they wouldn't get their creature back because it looks for the Oblivion Ring to leave the battlefield, right?
Yes.
Now, the difference is, because this looks like it's Vault 87, is that right?
Vault 87 Forced
Yeah.
Evolution, yes.
Okay. So the first chapter, gain control of target non-mutant creature for as long as you control Vault 87. It doesn't care about Vault 87 specifically leaving the battlefield, and it's not a trigger, it's just a duration. The moment you don't control Vault 87 anymore, that duration ends. And it doesn't care why you don't control it. Phasing out causes it not to exist anymore. It's not leaving the battlefield, but it just doesn't exist, and you can't control something that doesn't exist. So that duration immediately ends, they get their creature back.